Welcome back to the Scotti-BYTE channel, and this is Scott. So I think it's time to come back here once again and update you all on a video that I did about 2 days ago. And I've entitled this one, UDM Beast Possible Solution. So 48 hours ago, I migrated from a UDM Pro to a UDM Beast as featured in my UDM Beast Huge Problems video. And so that was really an interesting experience I had. Well, mostly a frustrating experience. Anyway, lots of apps were going offline. NetAlert X and Uptime Kuma kept seeing various applications going down, and it also indicated the same thing on my lab dashboard. And I could realize that several of those apps were unreachable if I tried to click on them or if I was inside them. I had problems, and that went for both apps that were reverse proxied as well as applications that were totally local to my network. So as I mentioned 2 days ago, I rebooted and I cycled power, and not only on the UDM Beast, but on the entire network infrastructure, meaning all of the switches and all of the servers and really anything that made up the network. But despite having rebooted everything maybe about 4 times, no luck. So physical servers, VMs, and containers kept showing that they were up and then they were down randomly. Sometimes they run for 15 seconds, sometimes 2 minutes, sometimes 5 minutes, but sometimes every last device would show that it was down. So there were no network errors on the gateway. I couldn't see any status that said anything was wrong. There was just failed connectivity to both the locally hosted services and also those things that were reverse proxied. And I not only saw the errors from inside the network, but people that tried to connect to services from outside the network were seeing the same flapping of services going up and down. So here's kind of an interesting thing if I digress for a little bit. When I was running my UDM Pro, and I've had this UDM Pro since it was released about 8 years ago, my CPU percentages pretty much sit at around the 75% rate is about as good as they ever get, and usually right around 85 or 90%. When I did this screenshot, they were doing 80% on the UDM Pro, and then 91% of its memory was utilized. So kind of in contrast to that, I did a screenshot just a little while ago on the UDM Beast, and it was showing 10% CPU and 40% memory. So that's really pretty good. And I will tell you that I have maybe about 180 clients on the network, and I'm running obviously the network controller, and I'm running Talk, and I'm also running Protect. And Protect's not really a big deal. I'm only running something like 6 cameras. So when I talked to UDM, they said, hey, why don't you go out and disable hardware offload? So if I SSH'd into my UDM Beast and I go ahead and execute a systemctl stop on cm.service, or CM is the service name, and then I turn around and do a status on that service, it'll tell me that it is shutting down the hardware offload connection manager. And here it clearly says that it's cleaned up after itself and that the service is actually stopped. So why they asked me to do that, I wasn't entirely sure, but here's my stab at what I think that's all about. So what exactly is hardware offload? Well, hardware offload on a gateway device, really any gateway device, is something that uses specialized hardware, for example, ASICs, NPUs, or packet processors. And ASICs are probably some of the more common things that are used. And an ASIC is an application-specific integrated circuit. So it's basically a chip that's designed to do one specific job extremely efficiently. Look at it like, a neural processing unit in an AI processor. So that's what hardware offload does. It offloads the CPU. So without hardware offload, the CPU has to handle all the routing, your NAT, the zone-based firewall, VPNs, and really lots of other things. And what they decide to offload to an ASIC is really entirely up to the designer of the gateways. So we don't really know from a proprietary standpoint exactly what's offloaded, but hardware offload is certainly a feature, and a good feature, I might add, in a device like the UDM Beast. And I mean, it's not like they haven't used hardware offloading before in the UDM Pro and the Pro Max and maybe some of their other devices. So hardware offloading is designed to dramatically improve your throughput, decrease your latency, and decrease main CPU load and improve power efficiency. So all these things are good. However, if we're looking at an entirely new piece of hardware and it's functioning a little bit differently, then is that hardware offloading operating correctly? And I'm going to get to that here in just a little bit. So hardware offloading appears to be an integrated part of the ARM system on a chip in the UDM Beast, and there's really no way to tell, as I said, how it works or exactly what it's doing. So 48 hours later, after I made the first video where I said, hey, there's big problems with the UDM Beast, here's kind of where I am right now. So there's all these mysterious client disconnections that I have completely vanished. And I don't mean that they've decreased. I mean that there are absolutely zero disconnections. I don't have any reports in NetAlertX. I don't have any reports in Uptime Kuma, and my lab dashboard, everything is staying green. So this is a good thing. Everything's online, right? So again, NetAlertX and Uptime Kuma are reporting no offline systems, and they're not seeing any extended latency that would trigger a, hey, I can't get to this web service kind of thing. And my 180 client systems are up and running just fine. So this is much better than what I had with the UDM Pro, where I saw at least a few of these happening every day, and I thought it was related to system performance. I mean, I have some Inca servers that are kind of low end and a little bit slower machines, but then I have some really fast machines as well, and I would see these disconnections, but just a couple a day, and I didn't really think much of it. I thought, well, you know, maybe the I/O isn't up to snuff, or maybe the NIC on that machine is slower, or any number of things. But I just kind of wrote it off because it wasn't a significant number. It wasn't like everything was going down like I had here with the UDM Beast. So remote VPN users are now also reporting much faster throughput. And I thought that was kind of interesting because, I would have thought that my inbound VPN's really controlled by the speed of my ISP service and nothing more. So that leads me to the next point here, which is that my ISP speed tests are much more stable, and they're even stable to different endpoints. So I did a video a while back on a speed test program, and I have automated speed tests that are running every 6 hours round the clock. And I've done that for months now. And I do it mainly to see how my ISP is performing, how my connectivity to my home lab out to the WAN is, that sort of thing. Well, the interesting thing is that I would always see some fairly slow ones. I mean, sometimes the download speed would be something like 95 megabytes per second, and megabits per second. And the thing about it is my service is 2,000 down and 350 megabits up. So I thought, wow, that's really bizarre, but I always wrote it off to the fact that, well, it's contacting an endpoint that doesn't have very good connectivity on the internet. Your mileage may vary, sort of thing. So external users are reporting that reverse proxy services are no longer bouncing or flapping, which was a problem in that previous time for the first day or so that I implemented the UDM Beast. And so here's an example of a speed test today. And I thought this was really wild. So in this particular case, it went to a endpoint that was a Boost mobile server, and it was able to get a download speed of 2.32 gigabits, which is faster than my 2.0 gigabits that my ISP provides me. And then the upload speed was 356 megabits per second, which is a little faster than the 350 megabits that my ISP promises me. So that was interesting. And it's also very interesting that now all these speed tests are stable and they're all within very close range of each other. We don't get these wild differences all the time anymore, which leads me to believe, was the UDM Pro just massively overloaded? I mean, you could see by its memory utilization, but I never really thought much of it because the UDM Pro operated really well, but I didn't think we had a problem. And hey, to all those people out there that are doing videos saying that the UDM Beast is massive overkill, well, I'm not sure in my case, given what I've experienced in the last couple of days, that that's true at all. So now I go back and I say, I entitled this slide, Hardware Offload Fixed It, right? Well, as it turns out, I logged in here just a little while ago and I thought it was really interesting. I did a system CTL status, cm.service, and notice that the Hardware offload connection manager is running again, even though I had stopped it previously a couple days ago when UDM told me to stop it. And most interestingly here, it says that it started itself up a couple of hours ago. So my real question is this service crashing? Is it bouncing? Is it coming up and down and being restarted? So that's kind of interesting, but I do know now that it's running, at least when I looked at it just a couple of minutes ago, and I thought that was notable. So the other thing that I did, and I told UDM about this in the service call, is that I decided to upgrade to Unify OS Early Access Release version 5.1.10, which is the latest. So you see here that my UDM Beast is now at 5.1.10. So I looked at the release notes, and there's nothing significant in the release notes that really explains anything that should make it run anything any differently. And as a matter of fact, there's really nothing in the release notes that's significant at all, and it doesn't address the UDM Beast in the lightest. So I thought that was kind of interesting also. So, is my problem related to hardware offloading? And if so, well, it's restarting and yet the system's still clean. Or is it related to the fact that I upgraded to Unify OS Early Access Release? Hey, remember, folks, when you're trying to debug a problem, always make more than one change at a time so you can never figure out exactly what fixed it. That violates the law of what you're never supposed to do when you're trying to find the solution to a problem. But in any case, I'm happy now that I'm where I am. However, and kind of in summary here, for 48 hours as of this video, the UDM Beast is stable right now. So I'm happy it's stable. But I'd performed at least 4 entire network power off tests and came back up, and in every case, I still had the same problem. So it wasn't like there was anything latent on the network because everything was completely powered down, and yet I still had the problem. So I saw the problem until I upgraded to Unify OS version 5.1.10, and I also turned off hardware offloading. However, as we just saw, was hardware offloading really off, and for how long? We know it's on right now. So, however, as I said, the CM service, which is the hardware offload connection manager, keeps restarting itself, I suppose. And at some point, the system was doing that. However, it's still stable. And I can say right now, things are really great. As a matter of fact, they're running really quickly, and the performance is unbelievable. So, that's amazing. I guess stay tuned. So I'm impressed with the UDM Beast performance now that it's actually working. And I'm also going to say that obviously I needed the more CPU and I needed the more memory for my network. And I thought all along that I had individual system performance problems. But apparently those mysteriously went away because when I upgraded to the UDM Beast, unbeknownst to me, it went out and upgraded all of my servers at the same time. Yeah, right. So, the only long pole in the tent here, so to speak, is the fact that I went to the UDM Beast. So if you don't know something's broken and you don't know why it hurts, maybe change something and see if it fixes the problem. So anyway, that's it for today. Please subscribe and like to the channel, and don't forget to hit your notification bell, and we'll see you next time.